Good afternoon. So we're here live with David Brown, the founder and CEO of V Interactive, one of the fastest growing and now the highest valued privately owned tech businesses in the UK. So David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's get straight into it. So I mean, as a serial entrepreneur and founder of businesses, how do you define entrepreneurship?
I think it's very easily defined. I think entrepreneurship is about achieving more with the same resources as someone else. And you can tell an entrepreneur when you meet them, you meet people that are very, very driven, can go the extra mile, can really define what a working day is. And most importantly, they can see the difference between concept, innovation and execution. And so many times, I meet entrepreneurs or so-be entrepreneurs who get addicted to the idea and the notion of just creating, innovating a new business. Well, innovation is obviously important, but it doesn't define a success. It doesn't define how a business can grow. You can have the best ideas in the world, but with poor execution, poor structure, poor organizational view, you can't get anywhere with the business. So the reason I say an entrepreneur achieves more with the same resources as another is because they look at everything that needs to be done and they make sure everything that's important gets the right attention, and they don't get carried away with just a concept. Concepts, as I say, are fantastic, but it's all about the planning and the execution.
Sure. And how has the attitude towards entrepreneurship, particularly here in the UK, changed over the course of your career?
I think for the first time, I think it's professionalizing. I was worried for a couple of years that there was this kind of sort of dragon's den attitude to entrepreneurship. And of course, that was largely fostered in the US, where entrepreneurship, of course, is a flourishing industry on its own. And hence, that's why the VC community has been so strong in the US for so many years and is still dominant financially. But I would say over here, the attitude is maturing somewhat in that starting a business, raising a bit of money and getting going is no longer the accolade that everyone respects. I mean, I think now it's shifting towards, what are you doing with that business? How are you scaling it? And is it sustainable as a model? I don't think the accolades are there anymore for just simply getting going and starting a business. I mean, you could look at the statistics, government statistics. I do believe that in 2014 there were over 50,000 businesses started, in the first quarter of the year, which is an absolute record. That means, of course, there's going to be the highest number of failures as well. That's going to follow, because most businesses still are addicted to starting and concept and getting going. Then, of course, the roadmap usually often falls apart. So, but I think over here, I think it's a more sobering approach now. I think in Britain, and certainly in the UK, I do believe we've always had a slightly more sober approach than the US. I think the US, can be very excitable about innovation and entrepreneurship, whereas over here, I think we're naturally a little bit more cautious as a nation, and I think that's come out in entrepreneurship and the way we view it. But from the dragon's den and the Alan Sugar sort of approach to entrepreneurship, or as people recognise it, the TV game show sort of approach to entrepreneurship, I think it has matured from that a little bit. And I would say, I see a lot of entrepreneurial people and potential strong entrepreneurs within our own business at V, and I would say that every one of those is inspired by the right principles. I try to inspire in my daily performance, and I don't think I inspire people, necessarily with brashness or dominance necessarily. I think I do it with my approach, my planning, my execution, my closeness to all the details in the business, and overall my work rate and the fact that I can achieve more with the same resources. I mean, V is a business that's probably invested about $100 million into it and built a multi-billion business, and compared to a lot of American large tech businesses, we are probably underfunded by tenfold, and yet have still achieved massive resources. So I think a lot of the entrepreneurs here are understanding the brand of entrepreneurship as it should be, which is they would associate it with effort and skill and determination. I think that's the right attitude to have. So hopefully we're contributing to the right definition of entrepreneurship.
Sure. You mentioned the word failure, and I mean, traditionally there's been perhaps a darker view towards failure here in Europe versus in the US. Do you think that's still the case?
Well, yeah, there's always been the adage, that failure is the best thing to learn from. Yeah. I have to say, I don't really share the view, and I lived in New York for 8 years, and of course, I had that view rammed down my throat, for years. And I actually don't believe it. I'd actually rather learn from my success. If you want to learn about failure, read about somebody else's. That's my attitude. But overall, I think failure, of course, you need to go through experience. And you see a lot of people that, can get, let's say they're in their mid to late 30s, and of course, that's the ideal age, apparently, to build a European unicorn. But you can have people that get to that age and have never really experienced enough because they don't expose themselves to enough. And I have to say, my first few years in big business, between probably the ages of 27 and 30, there are years where I was blind, and I made a lot of mistakes because I just wasn't experienced enough. And actually, that's nothing I don't think to be proud of necessarily. Actually, what it means is I should have had more advice. I should have listened to mentors more, and I should have got more people in my life with the right experience to understand things. It actually would have saved me time. So those mistakes are simply a product of the fact that I wasn't equipped. So I think I would say to entrepreneurs, make sure you do get advice, do get equipped, and also do the reading. Understand everything. Take business structure, for example. There's a fantastic book available which is free of charge in the UK, and it's called The Companies Act. And somebody pointed it to me, in 98, 99, and and I read the whole thing, and I've lived by it since. And it teaches you all about structure of business, and from equities and the relationship between directors and equity and shareholders, and this, that, and the other. And it's such a basic lesson in business. Yeah. And I hear people that go and study business and still don't study things like that. So, had I read that earlier in my career, I would have been more successful. And the mistakes I'll have made because I didn't understand the Companies Act, are not mistakes to be proud of. It just means I was ill-equipped. So I think the attitude here is, yes, there's perhaps a commercial attitude towards, lots of failures, but I think it's only ever anecdotally, sweet or interesting. And the Americans seem to love to say, hey, he failed 3 times before he made it. What a great guy. Yeah. Over here, I think it is harder to get on your feet after a failure, but I don't think failure is something to aim for. That's for sure.
Yeah. And what do you think of the quality of business school tuition? And I mean, as more and more people desire to be an entrepreneur, is that the right path to learn how to be one?
I have a struggle with that one. I've been doing some workshops at Cambridge University recently, helping in their technology entrepreneur course, and I've done a few lectures there. And it's been very, very interesting, some of the people that I meet and some of the people that are studying entrepreneurship. I'm not sure you can ever really study entrepreneurship. I think, it's a kind of a way of life. It's almost like, it's your workout plan at your gym. It's not how to run your body, but it's just a way to do something. And it's a set of philosophies and principles and ethos and things like that. But I think it has to be supplemented by core skill. I don't think you can study just running a business. You've got to come from a vocation or core business first. But I think clearly you can learn a lot from the lessons of entrepreneurship and the approach, and I think it does apply to a lot of different businesses. But overall, I wouldn't say it's something you can just study and then come out the other side. I do find that people who've are deep in business study, and I meet a lot of MBA students. Certainly at Cambridge, I've met a lot of postgrads that are trying to get to their first businesses. It almost seems like they get to the end of study, and even in entrepreneurship, and then start learning the real basics of business. And I kind of think that's the wrong way around. I would absolutely say, and I can say this categorically from experience, it's all about what you expose yourself to, and I think opportunity is everything. I think that's why V is great. We've got some very young people here in senior positions. I think, as I mentioned to you as we were chatting before, we have a 23-year-old director general in Paris doing an amazing job with a 50-person office, and we have people in their early 20s here running multi-million sectors for the business and growing them themselves from not with being spoon-fed by me or anyone else. They're they're learning about their own environment, applying their own individualism. We have a 25-year-old running. She's running her own separate travel project, which is completely controlling. She has all the support around her, but that's an amazing opportunity for someone of that age. But if they have no fear, then they can do that. But so I would say experience is everything, and I've seen people go from junior sales positions in this company, and those that are hungry enough keep wanting more, and they've risen and risen, and we have some pretty senior people here. We're about to have our first 26-year-old C-level person in the company here in the UK, which is, wow, as a multi-billion business, that's a big accolade for for a person of that age. but it's because they've exposed themselves, worked really hard. They've really exposed themselves to everything across the business, and then there's no limits. And I would say, that person's more equipped as an entrepreneur than somebody coming out of an entrepreneur course who knows the facts, because they're experienced and they've been exposed to so much.
So how do you foster that level of fearlessness within a business?
Well, I think you have to do it by example, and I'm either fearless or reckless. I'm not quite sure. I guess I'll work that out when I grow up eventually. But at the end of the day, I think I worry about the things I can't control. If something's out of my control, I can worry about that. Anything in my control, it's just a matter of time and planning and execution, and working things out. And there's always a solution. I think I learned that when I was studying composition, at music college, because you can be blocked and have a small idea and not get anywhere, but you either then produce nothing, or you get the pencil out and you keep working the same principal ideas into something bigger until you get something. And I think that sort of intellectual exercise, is on that intellectual sort of heavy lifting, I think is one of the best examples in business. And also I think when I studied music before business, I'm probably more qualified as a piano teacher than I am a businessman, and but didn't earn as much as a musician as I have in business, obviously. But I think you also take such responsibility for yourself, because when you're a musician, you can't blame anyone else for your performance, for for anything. And whereas in business, you can blame a whole structure and blame everybody else if you want. But I think that sort of independence of creativity, limitless creativity, pushing yourself, and never accepting anything other than exactly what you want to achieve. I think they're the things that can inspire people, can drive people, because at the end of the day, they've got to help themselves, and then everything you can show people that inspires them to take responsibility for themselves. And that's not just about doing it all yourself. It's about sometimes getting the right advice, but pushing people, knocking doors, saying I need help with this, understanding, doing the heavy lifting. Take finance, for example. I see so many people produce poor forecasts, or never really get their head around the finance and say it's not my thing. Well, you can't even instruct a CFO if you don't understand what they've got to do. So you pick up a couple of books, you learn about accounting, you learn about your P&L, balance sheet, cash flow forecast, income statement, accounts. You have to learn about it all, and it's a bit like using law. A lawyer is useless if they have a bad brief, and if you don't understand the basic principles of commercial law, transactional law, contractual law. If you don't understand the basis of that, you can't even brief a lawyer. So I think that again comes down to that sort of heavy lifting, intellectual exercise, and making sure you take responsibility for your own persona and what you are.
Yeah. We often see founders replacing themselves or being replaced by a so-called professional CEO at some point in a company's journey. You clearly haven't been through that. Why? And what makes you have the ability to see the company through?
Well, clearly I'm irreplaceable. No, I haven't found anyone yet. And no, I think I think to answer that question, you have to look at what the role of a CEO is. And I was a CEO first time around in a business, and I was probably okay at it, but I was still learning. And now I'm involved with a lot of other CEOs and a lot of other businesses, and and I take my role really seriously. So, the role of a CEO here, I think it is to take a company from concept to market proof, to market guarantee, to make sure you can show that there really is a market, and then to start building the scale, but also to foster all the key ethos of the business. So here, innovation, execution, internationalization, independent financing, leadership, all of these things are really important ethos to me. And until I'm happy that all of those things are perfectly in place, I'm not going anywhere. And now I'm in a scale game. I mean, let's face it, the role of a CEO ultimately is a recruitment one. You hire other people, you put people in place, but unless you have a grip of all those ethos and you can get everybody on the same page, it doesn't work. You can't hire a good management team. They have to be molded together perfectly, and they all have to execute their roles perfectly on an independent and interdependent basis. So, my work on that area is still being done. There'll come a point where, it's swimming along perfectly, and that is also my job, to make myself, less intrinsic to the business over time. We're a long way from that yet, and maybe a couple of years. But when that is the time, there may be somebody better at the execution stage scale beyond myself, because I'm clearly attracted to the sort of concept to innovation of execution and evolution and new market dominance, market creation. I'm clearly attracted to that side of a business. I find it very exciting, and I like the risk as well. I like a bit of a fight as well, and so I think when my job is done, if it's ever defined as done, I wouldn't hesitate to to pull back and let somebody else get on with it. But then my role would change, and actually that is the great thing about the CEO role. You start the first month, you put the trash out, and you make everyone a coffee, and by the end of it, you're shifting, and obviously my role will become much more financial over time as we start to look towards liquidity in various markets and use the the equity of our business to to dominate, to bring in other businesses, to bring in new territories, and to scale to the potential of our product portfolio.
As the pace of innovation quickens and we're seeing seemingly dominant companies being disrupted, once you've achieved a degree of market dominance, how do you then maintain that?
Yeah, well, it's difficult. It's difficult. I think there are a lot of big technology players out there that have done an incredible job of marketing, and it's usually on a first mover basis. That's most success stories in the big tech businesses are first mover, and actually they are rarely just pure product innovation. And let's face it, the physical products take a long time to evolve, and there's usually a big IP story behind it. But I think the great thing about these big dominant businesses is that they organize markets, and they organize markets into poachable sizes, into approachable sizes, and I think for us, the one thing we will do regardless of our dominance is we will organize the online performance industry into an organised sector that's recognisable from the outside, and I think at that point you either keep innovating and keep yourself incredibly relevant, or you start acquiring and start taking more segments of markets, and that's an exciting thing ahead for us, because we don't know what the market looks like in a year and a half. We think we're going to define the market, and we think we're going to change it with new products that are coming as well, which is very, very exciting. But I think one of the key elements of keeping your dominance is never to take your foot off the gas. And we are still a very hard-working business. And even though we've achieved a lot in our 4 years of coming to market, to build it to a multi-billion business from a tiny concept, that's great, but it still feels like we just scratched the surface. And that's a really exciting thing for us.
David, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Great.